We will be starting in a few minutes, about 1 more minute, and we will start the webinar. Okay, we will get started now. We will start today with a short video from our new Executive Director and CEO, Tom Kimbus.
Greetings from just outside the nation's capital. I'm Tom Kimbus. I'm head of the National Postdoctoral Association, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 11th Annual NPAW, National Postdoc Appreciation Week. Whether you're a postdoc, a postdoc office administrator, or faculty member, please take the time this week to celebrate the inspiration and the perspiration of the 80,000 postdocs that are out there. Really appreciate the support of all of our sponsors from across the year, including our lead sponsor for NPAW, Proteintech, as well as Gallagher Insurance. We have a great suite of programming this week, starting out today with Dr. Pfund of Wisconsin and Dr. John Beacom of The Ohio State University, doing our kickoff event on mentorship, followed by on Wednesday our next national event, which is through our partner NRMN, who will be leading us through their research mentoring network and how you can connect through it. On Friday, our third of our national events through our partner Postdoc Academy, and they will be showcasing leadership that you can exercise as a postdoc. These 3 national events are complemented by local celebrations across the nation. And check the NPAW website as a resource at nationalpostdoc.org for more information for the schedule of events. I've got 3 asks for you this week. First, as a postdoc at a member organization of NPAW, you have free affiliate membership. Come sign up with us. It's easy, it opens doors for you, and it makes the NPAW stronger. We're only as strong as our members, so we need for you to sign up. When you do so, you'll also get access to our brand new NPAW communities. This is a new platform that opened up that's right on our website and allows you to connect, share topics of interest, learn career tips, network for your next position. This is available to postdocs, postdoc administrators, and more. Second, we want to make sure that we as the NPAW continue to grow better at our jobs. We can only do that by hearing from you. So look for a short survey from us. I promise it'll be short, and this will be about your needs as a postdoc. We need to understand them so that we can address them better. We promise to read every one of your submissions. Third, enjoy. This is your week. You worked hard for this. Please step back for a moment and appreciate what you've done. Thanks to you from all of us at the NPAW.
Okay, Tom, if you want to do the introductions, that would be great.
Sure. Thanks, Christy, and thanks to everybody. Welcome to the 11th Annual National Postdoc Appreciation Week, or NPAW. It's a pleasure to be here virtually with you. I'm Tom Kimbus, as you just heard. I'm head of the National Postdoc Association. We're thrilled to have this year's theme be mentoring and have the first event of the week be the kickoff, featuring mentoring. So today's webinar, you'll hear from on mentoring matters from Dr. Pfund. She's senior scientist with the Wisconsin Center for Education Research and the Department of Medicine at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. Her work for the past 15 years has focused on mentorship, and she directs the Center for the Improvement of Mentored Experience in Research at UW-Madison. She's also the principal investigator at the National Research Mentoring Network, NRMN, Coordination Center. And that's important because our next national event after today is going to be on Wednesday, and that's hosted by NRMN, our close partners. They introduce NPAW members to their fantastic networking platform, so don't miss that. There's a link on the NPAW website under our calendar of events to register. And we're catching Dr. Pfund at the right time of the year. Halloween is her favorite holiday, and in case you're wondering, she's always prepared. She's already decorated for Halloween, even though the first day of fall is not until tomorrow. We also have with us Dr. John Beacom from the Ohio State University. He's our Gallagher Insurance Mentor of the Year and Director of the Center for Cosmology and Astroparticle Physics, or CCAP, which is much easier to say. He typically has about a dozen postdocs, and Dr. Beacom braves the elements in Columbus all year round by biking to work and nearly everywhere around town. So before, if you want to flip the slide, Christy, before turning over to Dr. Pfund, just as a reminder, you'll see there's our sponsors, Gallagher and Proteintech. Thanks for making this possible. Second, as mentioned, the link to, on our homepage is nationalpostdoc.org. For those of you listening, there's 215 of you who are sustaining members from universities and research centers. Thank you for your membership. If you're not a member, we appreciate your considering doing so. And for postdocs, membership is free for just about all of you if your institution is a member. It's great to have you on board. Please sign up as a free affiliate member. You'll get information from us about important things, news, events, ways in which you can further your career, that also allows us to represent you better by understanding your needs. And lastly, in terms of understanding needs, note you should have received an e-alert today from the National Postdoc Association, which contains a link to a survey. That is a survey in which we are able to understand your needs better so that we can build a better NPA to serve you. If you haven't had that link, check the NPA website. Right on the homepage, there should be a survey link. We'd love to receive that information from you. So as a reminder, as you go forward during the webinar, if you do have a question or a comment that is intended for the whole group, use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. If, on the other hand, you have a specific question for Dr. Pfund or Dr. Beacom, use the Q&A function. And that question will get routed through my colleague, Christy Ferguson, who'll be evaluating those questions and getting them prepared for our speakers today. If you didn't get your question answered, if you don't get it today, it's because we have a lot of people on this kickoff, and we'll promise to get something back to you as soon as possible. So with that, it's my pleasure to turn this over to Dr. Pfund to kick us off. Thank you again.
Wonderful. And thank you, Tom, and to the organizers. I'm very honored to be part of the kickoff here for the 2020 NPAW with Dr. John Beacom, and very happy to see that the focus is on mentorship. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, which is the same slide you're seeing, but will allow me to forward it. So we know that mentoring matters in the postdoctoral experience, and we know this from your own data. So I thought it appropriate to start things off highlighting the 2018 publication by Sean McConnell and colleagues using the National Postdoc Survey data, which had shown that data from 7,500 plus postdocs highlighted the impact of mentoring across all demographics. And it showed that it was an essential part of informing career choice and determining the quality of the postdoc education experience. And I think that this type of data and your responses to these types of surveys really can help raise the national voice of things that are important to you, such as mentoring. This type of work has been part of a long series of heightened awareness on the important role that mentorship plays. And this has really culminated in late last year, in October, on the importance of mentorship with the release of the National Academy's report on the science of effective mentorship in STEM. And that extra M there is for medicine. And I just also acknowledge all of the incredible sponsors that made this report possible. I had the privilege of serving on this committee and wanted to kick things off today sharing you some of the highlights of this report that I think hopefully should elevate things that should matter to you, and hopefully also put some of the pressure on the institutions where you do your work to really focus on advancing mentorship in an evidence-based way. So first, you might be wondering, why am I using this term mentorship? One of the things that the committee did in putting this proposal to get this report together was really to think about the word mentoring and mentorship. And we came up with really putting forth the term mentorship as a professional working alliance in which individuals work together over time to support the personal and professional growth, development, and success of the relational partners, so both mentors and mentees, through the provision of career and psychosocial support. So a couple things I want to highlight here is the term mentorship. We wanted to push forward with mentorship instead of mentoring to honor the roles that both people play in a classic dyadic mentoring relationship. We also wanted to raise the importance that mentorship includes both those career support functions like the career guidance and the skill development and sponsorship, but also the psychosocial support functions, the emotional support and the role modeling that are both needed for mentee talent development. And I think in the current context of the world and what we're experiencing right now, those psychosocial functions become even more heightenedly important. And so we really wanted to bring some focus to both of those. The report really dove into the literature, some of the critical elements that are known to be important in mentoring relationships, whether those are classic dyadic relationships or being part of a mentoring network with many mentors, is trust, self-reflection, expectations, and more importantly, aligned expectations in those relationships, and education. And I want to highlight especially education because mentorship is a learned skill. And being able to heighten those skills really can improve mentor and mentee attitudes, their self-efficacy or their belief that they can be effective mentors, and their mentoring behaviors. Now, while we hope that most of mentoring experiences are positive, we also wanted to be transparent and really come forward to say that, yeah, we know that there are ineffective experiences as well. And the literature does point to a study of negative mentoring experiences. And what we mean by this is mentorship's less effective when mentors are absent, they set unrealistic expectations, they don't provide clear and relevant guidance, or unfortunately, some engage in manipulative behavior, such as inappropriately delegating work to mentees or taking credit for mentee work. And it's important to know that negative mentoring can occasionally arise from ill intent, but more often, negative mentoring experiences can also arise from otherwise good intentions. And mentorship education can really help to turn those good intentions into actually effective good practice. So I wanted to pause here in this overview of mentorship and the highlighting some of the important elements of mentorship in effective relationships, as well as acknowledging some are ineffective, and get a sense from you. So Lydia's going to put up our first poll, and just give a second for that to come up. And we're going to ask you, this is anonymous, is as a postdoctoral mentee, how satisfied are you with your current mentoring relationships overall? And if it's hard to answer this across all your relationships, you can answer it according to your primary mentoring relationship in the research arena. So we'll give folks just about 20-30 seconds to answer this question, and then we'll show you the results. Just got over half of the folks answering the poll already. Thank you. All right, how about 10 more seconds? All right, I think let's go ahead and show the results of the almost 100 people that answered. So I think we can see here that we have folks that are largely moderately satisfied or very satisfied, and that is always reassuring to hear that you are feeling at least moderately satisfied. Some people extremely satisfied, and that's wonderful for you and your career. And then we also have folks who are just not very satisfied and some preferring not to respond. So thanks for sharing that. So we can end that poll, and I'm gonna move on. One moment. So wanted to also talk about that in the report, there are very specific recommendations made to everyone, all the stakeholders, from mentees themselves to mentors and to institutions and funders. And I want to focus today, because we have so many folks who are representing postdoc offices at institutions and organizations, is what the role of the institution can be to advance mentorship. So colleges and universities really can broaden access to quality mentorship and the support systems for that mentorship. but this may entail significant institutional change. The current mentoring systems are structured to benefit the prototypical STEM mentee. So in that case, we're talking about the prototypical being white, male, heterosexual, able-bodied, continued generation, or upper or middle class. And mentoring can and has been used to develop cultures of inclusive excellence, but when it is addressed from an evidence-based perspective. And those in which mentorship is used as part of building a culture of inclusive excellence are more likely to support the development of diverse STEM professionals. So what can institutions do specifically to support more effective mentorship on their campuses? They can provide mentorship education. That includes both training for mentees and training for mentors. They can promote the use of mentorship tools, including those that are evidence-based. They can encourage faculty and staff to share mentorship challenges and innovations and evidence with peers. They can establish systems for evaluating mentorship effectiveness with validated measures. And they can use data and research to hold broader conversations about mentorship activities and innovations. So I wanted to do a second poll, and we're going to have this one put up in a second by Lydia. Thank you so much. Does your institution provide mentorship education, as far as you know, for postdoctoral scholars specifically? So I've given you some choices here that include that your institution provides both mentor and mentee training, or maybe just mentee training for you as postdocs, or maybe just mentor training for you to become more effective mentors yourself, or they provide neither, or you just don't know. So we'll take just a minute here to get folks to think about this and to add their response to the poll. Just about halfway in terms of respondents. Thank you so much. All right, Lydia, I think we're just at about the 100 that have responded to the last poll, so we can share the results. Wonderful. So I think we can see here that we do have about a quarter of the institutions providing both some form of mentor and mentee training. Then we have some that are providing one or the other. Then we have a good percent, 13%, not providing either, and a huge percentage that don't know. So I think this is, one of the places that we can make some real quick impact is helping postdocs know about what is available in terms of advancing their own skill development as both mentees and mentors. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts on that. So in this last slide, what I wanted to highlight was some of the things that are being done to really help institutions hold themselves and be held accountable for advancing mentorship. I also wanted to share this work in particular to honor that it is the work of one of the postdocs I have the pleasure of working with, the senior author on this article, Dr. Juan Pablo Ruiz. And so I wanted to thank him, as it is National Postdoc Appreciation Week, for his work in leading now the Future of Research organization and publishing this work, which really came out of efforts across the country to gather information and come up with some draft guidelines about what we could hold institutions accountable for. And perhaps we could acknowledge them with bronze, silver, or gold standing if they were able to meet these suggested actions. So these include what institutions are doing to supplement mentoring support, setting up peer support cohorts, requiring mentorship education, conducting anonymous exit surveys, really pushing forward in diversity inclusion efforts, having transparent accountability, clear guidelines and timelines, mental health and wellness resources, and career and professional development resources. And I think these are really concrete, actionable areas where institutions can take where they're at and push their needs forward, push these forward in terms of really supporting their postdocs and their growth and development. So I am going to stop sharing there. And I am going to invite my partner in crime, who is a new colleague, and very excited to be presenting with him today for the first time. Turn it over to Dr. John Beacom, who's going to dive more deeply in to the mentoring that you need as postdocs and the mentoring you can provide as postdocs. Thanks, John.
Okay, thanks. Hi. Just a minute. I want to try to figure out how to share my screen. Okay, is that working?
Yes, John, it's working.
Okay, good. All right. Hello, everybody. I want to echo Dr. Pfund's remarks overall. I strongly agree with everything she said. And that includes the honoring you, the postdocs, for your really important role. Okay, so we started with the formal stuff, and I'm going to try to focus the point on exactly what people have in mind as a mentor. And, the ideal is, maybe something like Obi-Wan Kenobi, who kind of like lets you do your own thing, face your own challenges, and is supportive, but not domineering, and, there when you need them. And the other extreme where things are terrible is not typically evil, but typically incompetent and, more like The Office. And notice that, the mentee is not even in the second picture because it's, it's kind of all about them. So this is the kind of full span of options that can happen, but that's not the whole story. There's a lot that a person can do to attract the mentoring that will help them the most, maybe from their formal advisor, maybe from others. I'm going to talk about that. And I'm also going to talk about how you can do this best helping students. So there's really two parts to this. One is to help you sharpen your skills at receiving mentoring and attracting the right kind of mentoring, whether it's from the formal advisor or not, and using that with students and others that you work with. And these are really two sides of the same coin, and it's just a lot like, all of us went to school and we learned a lot about how to be a learner. And then once we became teachers, we learned a lot about how to be a teacher. And then that completely changed our perspective on how to be a learner, and so forth, back and forth. So by practicing both sides of this, you improve both of them. So this is why I think you're here today, is to learn more about these things and discuss with us at the end. Why are we here, the speakers and the NPA? We're here because we're trying to strengthen the nation's research enterprise by supporting postdocs, not only through the National Postdoc Appreciation Week, but more generally. And we're also trying to work towards a future where there's a vibrant, diverse postdoctoral community where everybody gets excellent mentoring. And that feeds another generation that demands and improves that mentoring, and so on and so on. Long term, this strengthens the science and the community and opportunities. So being a postdoc is hard. It's very important to just say that outright. It's hard. And we need to talk about why. If we talk about why, if we admit that it's hard and we talk about why, we can talk about how to cope with it. So the fundamental thing about research, as you know, is you never know what you're doing. And that's not only true in the subject matter, but it's also true in the way you carry out your work. Every month, there's some new task you have to do, even if you know the material, you have to do it in some new way. That's hard. We're constantly in the stress position of not knowing what we're doing. And that's especially true during the postdoc phase. But let me tell you, I still don't know what I'm doing. So the other part that makes it hard is people and societies are complicated and unpredictable. And then the third part is, you're in competition with other outstanding people. So when you're a postdoc, people like to say to you, this is the best time of your life. You can concentrate on your research and you don't have to do all of these committee work and other stuff that I have to do. That's true, except the existential dread of what was going to happen to me after the postdoc can really gnaw at you and make it hard to, in fact, have that be the best time. So it's true, it has a lot of great opportunities, but it's also psychologically difficult. So there are a lot of foundations for success, and I outlined 6 of them here. It's not a complete list. And I'm going to go through these in the next pages. But let me explain a little bit what I mean. Technical skills. So I'm in physics and astronomy, and I know what the technical skills mean there. But in biology or medicine or psychology or anything else, It could be totally different. But the mentoring skills, being both a learner and a teacher, that's universal. And the communication skills, like how well you can write papers, how well you can give talks, that's universal. And so are the visibility skills of not just doing a good job on the talk, but making sure people see the talk, and not just doing a good job on the paper, but making sure people see the paper. Then the personal skills of managing your career and your time, and also just coping with others. And last, strategy, how to think about all of this in a strategic way. And sometimes the situation is perfect and we just have to do our part, and other times we have to make the right situation happen. One of the most important things I want to outline here, two things. First of all of these things are skills. They're not attributes. Attributes are something that are kind of fixed and unchangeable. I'm never going to be able to dunk a basketball because I'm just not tall enough. That's an attribute. But skills, like shooting 3 points, whatever, that's something I can develop. And all of you, if you thought about some athletic thing like long jump, you would all think, oh, I should get a coach and I should practice and I will get better. But the problem is people don't always think that way about their research and their career. They often think I either have it or I don't, and that is totally, totally wrong, and it's not helpful. All of these things are learnable skills, and with the right work and help, you can learn them. And it's also important, so it's a skill itself to think about these things as skills, to go into a growth mindset. So to zoom in a little bit more, let's talk about these in detail. So the technical skills, everybody's got a special way to learn that depending on what your field is. One of the most important general things, though, is to find a network of allies and ask them questions. Maybe you have a formal advisor, but there surely are other faculty and alumni of the group, present, more senior postdocs, lots and lots of people who can become allies, and you can ask them lots of questions. Do that. So also try to make yourself unique. You have to learn all the standard stuff, but you can learn some special skills. The mentoring skills, you have to spend a lot of time talking about goals and strategies. And this is, again, the importance of having a real network of allies. So you're not putting all the work on one person. And also you're not only getting one perspective. If you have 5, 10 people you can talk to on a frequent basis, that gives you lots of opportunities to compare notes. That's a very important point. Your job is not to go to somebody and say, what should I do? And they tell you what to do and you do it. Your job is to go to a bunch of people, gather a bunch of information, and then use that to make the best decision for you. So trainings can help with this, and my university has a great Office of Postdoctoral Affairs. Earlier in the poll, we learned that many universities have something similar. Hopefully that becomes even more. You can even seek those out online. A lot of them have good information available to anybody. And then you can start practicing things like, suppose you need to learn how to review a paper. You can talk to a faculty member and say, I would like to learn how to review a paper. Can I help you review one? Believe me, they're going to want the help. Or can I help review a grant? Things like that. And these are skills also that you can do when you're training students, teaching them how to review a paper through practice. Ultimately, you would be responsible, but you can show them how it works. And once people understand how the refereeing process works, it really helps them understand how to write a paper. Communication skills. There's a lot of stuff here. Writing well matters. Speaking well matters. Making great figures, plots matters. There's a lot of resources available for this. I list some of them. One of the things that we find at Ohio State that's very helpful is a daily practice where we get together and we discuss new papers that came out that day. In my field, there are about 100 new papers that come out per day. Nobody can read them all. So that's an important point of how do you make those papers get noticed if you're one of the authors? I'll come back to that in a minute. But in the meantime, we talk about these papers on a daily basis, and we pick 10 maybe that we might talk about, and we end up talking about, say, 3. And this is a fantastic opportunity to practice your skills of how to read a paper quickly and get to the point. This is not a normal journal club. In a normal journal club, one person reads the paper super carefully, nobody else does anything. In ours, everybody reads it at some level and we discuss it. Participating in outreach also really helps. So this coming back to the visibility thing, consciously putting attention onto getting visibility for your career is important. You can't wait for things to happen. So suppose you want to get some invited talks at conferences. One possibility is you can wait around and you might wait a long time. Another possibility is to figure out conferences as soon as they're announced where your material would be a great fit, and then either ask your advisors or other faculty at your institution or people you may have met who are on the advisory board of a conference if they would consider recommending you for a talk. You have to go out and get this. And if you do a good job, you start getting more and more invitations because of that. But to get started, you have to get help. You need a web page, you need social media. Don't look at, oh, you're gonna look at mine, but they're not good examples, but I'm not looking for a job right now. Another thing you can do about the visibility thing is when a new paper comes out that you like, you can write to the authors. The wrong way to write to the authors is to say, I see you had a paper, you should cite me. Don't do that. Don't say anything about that. Ideally, write to the authors, ask some good questions, and maybe they'll start a dialogue. And this is a great way to get to know people. And then later, when you have a paper, these are some people you can send a copy to, and you can say, I'm going to submit this paper soon. I would potentially be interested in your comments if you have time, and you might be surprised that they do. This is all about getting your name out there because, like I said, in my field, there's 100 new papers a day. In the old days, when there were many fewer papers, people could figure out who you were by reading your papers. But now, they read your papers if they know who you are. So if I see a name I recognize, oh, I take a closer look. That's just the way things work. And so your job is to get your name out there better. Lots of ways to do that. So, but work is not everything. And if you spend all of your time on work, you will become less effective and, or worse. You need to make sure your life is balanced in lots of ways, exercise, hobby, things like that. All of us need to make our English or whatever language of our country as strong as possible. Have good manners, so when you go out to dinner with a speaker, you don't offend them. Building up cultural fluency by watching TV, reading books, seeing movies, that's really important, so you get the joke when people make it. And another important point, when things get tough, going to counseling is normal. It's appropriate, meaning that you don't have to have a problem about, I don't know, long-standing fear of water or something. You could be struggling with work issues, and that's totally appropriate to bring to counseling. And it's also very effective when you do. So you always need to think about your long-term goals. So suppose your long-term goal is to be a faculty member at this kind of institution. What do you need to do to get there? And what do you need to do before that, and before that, and before that? And this is something experienced people can help you map out. It's really important to spend a lot of time thinking about why other people think the way they do, so you can anticipate their reactions and get the best reactions. Okay, so what does it take to be a good mentor? Ideally, you invest yourself in the success of the person. And as Dr. Pfund hinted at, once you've done that, where that takes you is everything. A lot of it's going to be about work, but I've also spent a huge amount of time helping people with all kinds of other issues in their lives that impede their work. And the best kind of mentoring situation is where somebody brings you a problem that's really, really troubling them. And in 10 minutes, you can say, I hear you, that's common, here's how to solve that, here's exactly a way forward, and then it works. And then they're free. And that doesn't always happen, but when it does, it's really wonderful. That's, again, part of that network of allies. If your primary advisor can't help you with that, build up other people who can. So you need to make your mentees feel safe. You need to use your power to help them. And the best advice, I mean, classes and trainings are good, but the best advice is the stuff where you really listen to what's going on with them and think about it and try to help come up with the best solution for them. And again, use your experience to help anticipate what they're going to go through. So thanks very much for your time, interest, and attention. We're happy to take questions. And congratulations on this week, and we wish you the best for your careers. At the end here, I close with some links that you may find helpful. I want to highlight the ones at the bottom. The National Postdoc Association is a great organization, can help a lot of you. And if you're at an affiliated university, you can join for free. They have a wide range of programs, including many special ones this week. And they just started the NPAW Communities, an online platform. Highly recommend this, and thanks, that's all. The PDFs of the talks will be available later.
Okay, thank you so much, both Christine and John, for those great talks and all the good advice there. We really appreciate that so much. And so we've had a few questions come in, and we will get started with that. And just as a reminder, anyone that does have questions, please put them in the Q&A section of Zoom. It'll be at the bottom of your screen, probably to the right of participants when that taskbar pops up, and we will get started. So the first question is, what is your advice to increase true mentorship involvement and accountability from PIs at the institutional level? As postdocs, we are aware of the importance, but it often is lacked from our mentors.
Do you want to start with that, Chris?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, and thanks, Anne Sophie, for that question. So I think that is the million-dollar question, right? So I think for a long time, the challenge was getting the awareness where it needed to be about the critical need for effective evidence-based mentorship. I think that we, as a large community, have seen the needle move. And now it's not about if it's important and where's the evidence it's important, but how do we now hold mentors and departments and organizations and institutions accountable. And that is a challenge like any of these areas. That's a challenge with teaching. That's a challenge with climate change. That's a challenge across the board. That doesn't mean that we can't make progress, but they're sticky wickets. So I think that a couple of the things that I'll highlight, and these I think were really highlighted in the article I shared from the Future of Research team, were some really concrete ones. I think that even though we need to acknowledge the confidentiality and the safety and the anonymity of postdocs giving feedback about their mentors, we've got to figure out ways to do that. And whether that's exit surveys, whether that's large-scale anonymous surveys, or even large-scale ways in which things can be aggregated so that we can figure out if there are areas in which, in departments or even individuals, where things aren't working well, so that we can address the shortcomings. Those are tricky. There's no simple way to do it, but I think it's important. But I do think things like the T32 requirement for mentorship education for the mentors of folks on graduate and postdoctoral fellowships is a move in the right direction. However, we've got to get those folks in the door, and it's got to matter in a meaningful way. So I think one of the concrete things that is really interesting is, you know, can departments start to ask mentors to go beyond just naming? When you ask about your mentorship activity in your reviews, you'll list, you know, typically you list who you've mentored. But are we really asking for what approaches they've chosen to use? What's the evidence behind those approaches? Have they engaged in any kind of mentorship education to really start to elevate that the investment is not just about who you mentored, but how you mentored? John, anything you want to add to that from your perspective? You probably live in this, kind of how do we hold the accountability?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. First, I agree about all the institutional stuff, and there is a movement nationwide to have more offices of postdoctoral affairs and to do a better job, as Dr. Pfund said. And NPA is a huge part of that. But let's focus on a more short-term aspect. Many people have talked to me and they say, okay, I'm in my postdoc for another year or two. I don't have the greatest mentor. What do I do right now? So let's try to work on that. So I think the most important thing is the thing I already said about trying to build up other mentors in your life. And you might think that only the person who pays your salary would care about you. But that is by far too pessimistic a read of human nature. And there are many people who would be interested in helping you. And even if, they're not paying you, they're not going to write a paper with you, they just get interested in you and your work and want to help you. Such people abound. They're not everybody, but they're definitely out there. And there are ways to find those people and to cultivate relationships with them. And the first thing to do, don't do this. Knock, knock. Hi, will you do some difficult and time-consuming task for me? And the person's like, by the way, what is even your name? And that's not the right approach. The right approach is knock, knock, or email, I guess. I'm so-and-so, and I'm a postdoc at this institution, and I'm interested in learning more about your work because I'm trying to broaden my career perspectives for thinking ahead towards my next jobs. I'd love it if I could attend, one of your group meetings or something like that. I've read a bunch of your web pages, and I'd just like to learn more and just build up a relationship. Don't start with the ask. Start with trying to find people with whom you're simpatico, and things will happen from there. And don't put it all on one person. It wouldn't be crazy to try to get to know 10, 20 people. Other faculty at the institution, postdoc alumni of that group. You'd be surprised how often they might be willing to help you. This is something we do a lot in our center. And I'm constantly amazed how generous I'm not, because they're great people, but I'm happily surprised, or whatever, happily confirmed that all of our previous postdocs are super happy to help the present ones. And I think you would find that too.
Great point. And I would say also, the National Research Mentoring Network, and they'll have that session on Wednesday. We'll talk about how to reach out and find additional mentors in the community. I think John's point's a really good one is, sometimes people will come up and they'll say, oh, Dr. Pfund, could you be my mentor? And that ask is enormous. So one, I think to John's point, is building the relationship, and the other is being clear about what you need. It's much easier for me if someone says, I'm just really struggling with a conflict I'm having with a coworker, and I see that's coming up in the questions, and say, I really love some mentorship on that, versus, can you read a grant proposal? Both of those are great asks, but they're very specific. If you ask someone to be a mentor, it can mean many, many things, and there's lots of tools to help you identify your needs. Those asks are much easier to say yes to, because we know what we're getting into, and we can also say, I don't have the time to do that right now, despite my interest, or I don't have the skills. Maybe I'm not the best writing mentor. And why would I agree to be your writing mentor if I'm not going to actually be that good at it? Maybe I need some more skill development as a mentor before I say yes to those things. That's a particular area of mine, so I'm actually self-disclosing, not my greatest skill area.
Okay, great. Thank you both for those answers. I think the next question was more directed towards Dr. Pfund about organizing. They've been through the CIMER course on facilitating entering mentorship, and wondering about organizing a workshop for postdocs, and should they focus more on the postdoc mentoring undergrads, or should they focus more on postdocs who wish to become faculty and mentor from that side?
Yeah, so the short answer to that is, all thinking about your mentoring practice now and in the future is all useful. But we have evidence from implementing that it's most effective if the mentor training that you are offering to postdocs resonates with the people they're mentoring in real time, because they can go from those and try it out. So if they're mentoring undergrads, they're mentoring graduate students in the lab while they're engaged in the mentor training, have them apply it there. It's much easier to extrapolate to other career stages later, but don't lose the opportunity to implement it in real time.
Okay. Another question is, I'm interested in knowing how to assess mentorship at the department and institutional levels.
I think that's a Chris question.
So assessment's a tricky wicket. There are lots of wonderful scholars really trying to come up with assessment tools that are validated to really get at what we'll call climates of mentorship across the institution or organization. So both at the macro and the micro level, as well as getting into assessments of the relationships that make up those environments. There are some good tools out there. You are welcome to reach out to me and I can tell you kind of what I know about and some of the scholars who are doing that work. Many of them are looking for institutional partners to try out these tools on to get more data. So there's some wonderful colleagues out there in the field that are looking, that are trying to build, that are trying to curate and trying to test. And I can't list them all now, but happy to share their names with you and you can reach out to them. But it is a very nascent field and in terms of things that are emerging and so it's right at the cutting edge and such important work. So anything we can do to help those folks advance that is really important.
Christy, I'd like to jump in on a point there. Is that okay? So in the previous answer, Dr. Pfund talked about having people practice mentoring in, like, you know, if they're TAing an undergrad lab or some other situation like that. One thing I forgot to emphasize is, you know, a lot of people think that the role of a teacher or a mentor is basically a judge and like a you know, boot camp commander or whatever. That's totally wrong. Really, it's more of a guide. And that can be true in teaching as well. And of course, in teaching, you have to have some formal assessment. But if you think of yourself as a judge, you're going to be a terrible mentor. If you think of yourself as a coach, you can be much better. And flipping that around, if you're constantly afraid of being judged, as many people are, then it makes it hard for you to learn properly. Actually, not that everybody is kind of assumes that everybody above them in rank is trying to judge them and to weed them out. That is actually pretty rare. They're almost all pretty helpful and more coach-like. And if you take the attitude that everybody's trying to judge you, you'll be too defensive and you can't learn well. And that really misses an opportunity. So this is a good point to remind you, you know, people talk a lot about imposter syndrome. And about, I don't know, 30% of people report having imposter syndrome. And the other 70% lie and say they don't. So really, it's everybody. So if you just acknowledge that, it helps.
I wasn't raising my hand to speak, Christy. I was raising my hand for having imposter syndrome.
I completely understand that one.
In so many ways.
I don't think I've met a person in the postdoc community that has not had that feeling.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the thing I said about research earlier. Either the research or the kinds of work you're trying to do, you're always doing something you don't know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. We're all learning all the time.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, another question is, their institution it's not a traditional academic postdoc. They do not offer much in the way of postdoc mentoring, training, or career development. What are some ways that postdocs can do this outside of their institution?
Well, I can speak to the mentoring. There are some wonderful online trainings, both asynchronous and synchronous, that are accessible. We have many of those posted on the Simmer project website, but many of them are linked from the NPA website. You know, if you haven't checked out the mentoring resources on the NPA website, do so. They're awesome. And we can continue to share things to enhance that website as well. In terms of broader professional development for the postdoc community, I suspect John or some of our other coordinators for this webinar probably can speak to that with much more authority than me.
Well, you know, NPA has a ton of stuff. I'm not sure if this question is being asked from the perspective of a postdoc, a mentor, or like a postdoctoral affairs office person.
I'm not sure either. I'm assuming a postdoc.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Very good. All right, let me see here. So your experience over the last couple months, what, from your perspectives, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that postdocs are facing in the COVID-19 times?
2020.
Dr. Beacom, you want to start this one off?
Yeah, so I mean, this is obviously a super difficult time. The pandemic is obviously part of it, and the isolation is part of that. And the stress about financial stuff that follows from that is part of it. The political scene in the US and the tensions around the Black Lives Matter movement and related things. By the way, I was going to wear that t-shirt today, but my wife said I should wear something with a collar. So I did. It's a super tough time for everybody. And that, I think, raises the stakes on the things that Chris and I talked about earlier about finding ways to get support. You know, if you acknowledge that the postdoctoral experience is stressful and take actions to cope with that stress, it works a lot better than if you just try to grit it out. Can you repeat the question, please? I want to make sure I'm answering it.
Sure. Let me give, okay. In your experience, what are the biggest challenges for current postdocs in being during COVID-19?
Yeah, okay, so the way increased stress because of everything happening in the world. It's just a very tough year. And that combined with isolation. And maybe third, combined with the idea that a lot of universities may not be hiring. This makes it super tough. But let's address that last point. First of all, the academic path is not the only way to be happy. And the reasons to do a postdoc are not only to be on the academic path. So that, the postdoc training is part of being a postdoc is when you learn how to go into business for yourself as a scientist or other researcher, other academic. And those skills of being able to kind of go into business for yourself, so to speak, and direct a lot of your own research and manage a lot of your own career, that's very applicable to industry as well. Well, we've had a lot of our postdocs at Ohio State go to industry and then come back. We have a series called Invitations to Industry where they come back and tell us about their experiences. Generally, people are extremely happy. People overassume that their only way to be happy is to be working on a specific topic. But in my experience, people are most happy when they're working on certain kinds of processes. So for example, suppose I like neutrinos. Oh, I do, yeah. But it's not the thing I like. I could also get interested in minerals. I could also get interested in a million other things, but it's the kind of work that I like. And I attach it to the topic, but really it's the type of work. And I think people can find happiness much more broadly if they think that way. So for example, I don't demand that all of my friends like AC/DC. I do, but they don't have to. You make it too specific, you lose out on a lot. Chris, you want to add anything?
The only thing I'll add, and I did, Christy, I realized I added a link to something in the Q&A to answer, but I wasn't sure if it shows up. So two things. One is that I think it's really critical, in addition to everything John said, to use this as a moment to reassess and realign expectations. No one can have the same expectations of each other right now. Not for your work productivity, not for the process and the way things happen.
Yeah.
This is stressful, but it affords an opportunity to tackle things maybe that you haven't tackled before in your mentoring relationships, or you have an opportunity to reassess and realign. I put in, we can share on the link, a link to a preprint of an article we posted about, we wrote it in the midst of COVID, before many of the other challenges, including the heightened awareness on racial injustice, happened, and the fires and all of the instances of climate change were happening. But I think it holds true, which is really using this moment to reassess, realign, and reimagine your relationships, because we're all in a place where we have to do it. So it's a common denominator, it's a common ground. So you can say what was working in our communication before and what wasn't, and now we have to reimagine it anyway. And what were my goals before, and what do they have to be now? Because we're going to have to reimagine it and realign how to get there. So what may seem like very stressful, and it is, can also be a moment to have that realignment conversation and reimagination that's going to happen. Because if we're not having those conversations, we're kind of in denial of what has to happen. And that's not just for you as postdocs. Your mentors are having to reassess and realign too. What we can do, how much we can give, where are we falling short in terms of being able to be responsive because we're juggling. We have to have honest conversations with you too, because I know I can only speak for myself, but I can't do what I was doing before, and I can't do it the same way. And that has impact on the people I work with. And I got to grapple with that, and they have to grapple with it, and we have to grapple with it together. So I guess I would say that that's one of the biggest struggles in this current context, and in some way it's a pretty interesting opportunity.
Yeah, I like that point. I think people are way more forgiving of like things going a bit off the rails this year, because everybody's like, yeah, 2020. So that gives you more space to bring up difficult issues than you might think, because everybody else really gets it.
There's no problem with saying I'm struggling, because everybody's struggling. So if you ever felt like in the power dynamic, in the context and the situation, you couldn't say I'm struggling, there was never an easier time to say you're struggling, because there is, and I'm not saying that all of you have perfect mentors who are going to hear that in the way you wish they would. I'm not living in a fantasy land. But there was never a time where it was more acceptable and more understanding to say, man, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for about one or two more questions. I think I might take two of these questions, looking for some specific language and things that touch on what we've already talked about in some regards at one of our last questions here. And just to let everyone know, we're going to keep all of these, and we're going to create an FAQ, kind of a list, so we can provide a more concrete examples and ideas after the presentation today. So the two I'm going to combine are about good mentor-mentee relationships, and about when you have different personalities, or when your mentor is ignoring your email asking for a one-on-one meeting, and how do you work through those situations.
Have more than one mentor.
Yeah, I would say more than one mentor. I will say the personalities thing is, if you're comfortable doing so, I think those are really interesting opportunities to do some things like a communication styles inventory to highlight where you're different, and then talk about what that means. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, I think there's still an incredible opportunity to talk about, wow, that's not kind of how I see things. You know, it's really, it's a gift, even though it can be a struggle, to learn how to effectively work with someone who's very different than you. And so as long as it's to the extent that the two of you can explore that in a way together, if you feel comfortable doing so, can be a really interesting opportunity. It helps your mentors too, because you're not going to be the first introvert or extrovert that they want to work with effectively. You may be the first one that you're aware of, but you won't be the last.
Yeah, and that point about the person asked about if the advisor ignores the first email. So then what you can do is, you know, several days later, you can write a follow-up. We say, you know, gentle reminder, I'd like to come back to this, because they may have just forgotten it. It's probably not that they deprioritized you. It's that 2020 emails happened since they got yours.
I'm also not opposed to saying, you know, I haven't heard from you, I know you're drowning. I'm going to go ahead and put something on your calendar if you have access to an assistant, their calendar, maybe that's not possible, in hopes that it works out for you, that time works for you. I don't think that that's presumptuous, or, you know, I'm more than happy, you know, to have somebody like say, I'm going to just take care of this because we need to talk. Again, you have to navigate your relationship and whether that works, but you may consider that if it is appropriate for your relationship.
Yeah,
The last one I want to say, Christy, is I see the resolving conflicts between two coworkers, and I know we don't have time, but I just really want to stress the power that comes with bringing in a third party. Campuses have it. Your postdoc offices should help direct you. I did this as a postdoc multiple times. There's no shame in doing it. Third-party facilitators and conflict management help are there for a reason. Use them.
Yeah, one other point I would add, I guess, is instead of trying to accomplish everything in one meeting, it's better to have first a regular meeting, second of all, just more frequent small interactions, because that seems more manageable to busy people.
Okay, well, very good. Thank you so much to both Christine and John for your advice and your willingness to present and answer all these questions today. Thank you to everyone that has attended. We really appreciate everyone's involvement, and we hope that you all have a wonderful National Postdoc Appreciation Week, and feel free to reach out to us if anyone has any other questions. You can reach the NPA either at contact@nationalpostdoc.org or come to our website, which is nationalpostdoc.org. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and thank you, postdocs.
Thanks.